Thanks, Steve, for showing that video for you all to see today. And thank you, Kusamita. My name is Stephen Avino, and I am the Executive Director of the Parliament, as you just learned. And thank you for all of you for coming out today for this wonderful event. And before I talk about the Parliament next year, I wanted to thank actually Kusamita for all the work she's put into putting this together, and the Buddhist Chi Foundation, who continue to be great partners in hosting us today, and Steve Chu, who's doing great work on the technology and putting it all together. So thank you, everyone. And I also want to thank our panelists. So can we get a round of applause for all their hard work? So the Parliament of the World's Religions has a long and storied history. And it is a history that is reflective of the best of us, the best of what humanity can do when we come together for good. In 1893, the first parliament was held in conjunction with the World's Columbian Exposition, and is widely recognized as the birthplace of the interfaith movement, as you know. 100 years later, the world returned to Chicago in 1993 to celebrate the centenary of that event. And since then, there have been more modern parliaments in Cape Town, Barcelona, Melbourne, Salt Lake City, which I was lucky to work on, Toronto as well. And you've heard today that thousands will be here, not here, I'm sorry, we're in New York now, in Chicago. We'll be coming back to Chicago for the 2023 Parliament. And I'm not just, when I say thousands, I'm not just blowing smoke. Almost 2,000 people have already registered to come, and it's a year away. So there's going to be a lot of people next year. It will be held August 14th to 18th at the Lakeside Center at McCormick Place Convention Center in Chicago. So in 1893, Swami Vivekananda said during the Parliament that he firmly hoped that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. And I would like to think that good Swami was right about that bell, that with that bell, a movement began, and a movement for peace, a movement that will eventually lead to the end of fanaticism and persecution. A movement that recognizes we are all human beings, we are all part of the same human family. But this cannot happen without work. And it's time for people of faith to get to work, you see. Because as this video just told you, and as you've heard from our panelists, freedom, human rights, and democracy are under attack all over the world. What some see as the crowning achievement of the 1993 Parliament in Chicago, which Kusamita has already mentioned, is the Declaration Towards a Global Ethic. If you don't know about it, it's a landmark declaration stating the universal values and principles and ethics that are shared by the world's religious and spiritual traditions. And it emerged from consultations with scholars and religious leaders. The declaration affirms the human rights as defined in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations. But it also states, and I quote, "After 2 world wars and the end of the Cold War, the collapse of fascism and Nazism, shaking to the foundations of communism and colonialism, humanity has entered a new phase of its history. Today, we possess sufficient economic, cultural, and spiritual resources to introduce a vision of peace, people living peacefully together, of ethnic and ethical groupings, and of religion sharing responsibility for the care of the earth. A vision rests on hopes, goals, ideals, and standards. It is the communities of faith who bear responsibility to demonstrate that such hopes, ideals, and standards can be guarded, grounded, and lived." Now, as you all know, this remains true 3 decades later. And I don't have to tell you that these autocratic dangers that many in 1993, and as Nitin mentioned earlier, thought was a thing of the past, which the global ethic characterizes as fascism and Nazism, have reared their ugly heads around the world and here in the United States. They are growing, not collapsing, as the global ethic said was happening in 1993. Today, they're growing. The last time I was in New York, it was for an interfaith prayer service for Ukraine. An illegal invasion still going on now 6 months later. Here in the United States, Christian nationalism is a growing threat to us continuing to be a religiously diverse democracy. Voter suppression laws are being passed all over the country, and for the first time in our history, there was a coordinated effort to overturn the votes of the people This effort almost succeeded. These same people are working now to make sure they have enough people in power that they will succeed the next time. This is incredibly dangerous. These are just some of the myriad examples of how we are not living up to what we thought the world was going to be in the future in 1993 when the global ethic was written. It is our moral responsibility as people of faith to non-violently guard and exemplify the hopes, ideals, and standards that the global ethic upholds, and not let the world slip back into the old phase of history, a phase of autocracy and the suppression of freedom and human rights. This is why it's so important that people of difference, people of many faiths come together as we've come together this morning. It is also why next year the theme is a call to conscience, defending freedom and human rights, which you've heard so much about today. We are being called to build a better world. We can make the world a better place if we all work together. And in a moment of great crisis, it is people of faith who must rise together in all of our differences and defend freedom and human rights. This is what we are going to do next year in Chicago in August. We're going to show the world that faith does not need to be a source of division and violence. It is time to take religion from the realms of darkness and bring it into the light. We can do this by showing what hope looks like when we live out our beliefs with love for one another and an understanding for one another. We can show the world that people that are different from you, or have a different faith or different beliefs, are not to be feared or have their freedoms and human rights taken away from them. Instead, they are to be loved for their differences and their freedoms and human rights upheld as sacred. So please join us next year in Chicago. You can register at 2023POWR.org. And I also, as Kusamina mentioned, we invite you to propose a program to exhibit or sponsor or hold a pre-parliament event, such as the one held here today. And every attendee of the parliament brings uniqueness. They bring their unique wisdom and their worldviews from their religious traditions and lives, their scholarships, their artistic talents, and their activism. And we need all of this from you. So Henry, please, we need you to bring those programs. And we need all of you to propose at least one program, a panel, a workshop, whatever you can bring to the table. All of your voices are important. So programming for the 2023 Parliament will focus largely, but not exclusively, on the theme, as you know, a call to conscience, defending freedom and human rights. Our special tracks of the 2023 convening on faith and democracy and the city of Chicago, faith and interfaith understanding, our broad critical issues of peace, justice, and sustainability, and our critical constituencies of Indigenous peoples, the next generation, and women and girls. Also on our signature document, as I mentioned, the global ethic. Our program proposals are being accepted until October 3rd. So not a whole lot of time, but that's the deadline. And I hope, as I said, I hope all of you can bring something to the table for that. I know that the 2023 Parliament can make a difference, and not only in the United States, but all over the globe. And we can be a light in the darkness, a light of hope, and that is what the world needs right now. Thank you.